Welcome to The Cosmic Codex, exploring our science fiction universe. With science fiction author Brian Scott Pauls. AI voiceover created using Mike Monster.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brian. This is the Cosmic Codex podcast episode for July 30, 2026. I'm happy to finally share my interview with Kate Ristau, president of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association, recorded over a year ago. We spoke just before I lost my job and suspended this podcast while I reinvented my professional career, as I covered in last week's episode. I'm so glad to bring this discussion to you. Kate has such great insights into the speculative fiction writing community. We conducted this interview last May, about a month before the Nebula conference in Kansas City. That part of the interview is out of date, but Kate still has helpful observations about what makes for a good conference venue. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Also, please remember, Cloudacy, my consulting business providing fractional chief technology officer services, is now a sponsor of this podcast. If you or someone you know needs professional tech guidance for their author coaching or independent publishing business, check out the link in the show notes. Thank you. And now, on to the interview. Our guest today is Kate Ristau, the president of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association. Kate, welcome.
Hello, great to talk with you today.
Well, it's great to have you, and I've really been looking forward to this interview. To start out with, if you could tell us, what is the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association?
Yeah, so the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association has been around since 1965, and it's an organization that both helps writers on their writer journey as they're publishing, as they're creating, as they're bringing their work out into the world. But then we also support and advocate and defend the speculative fiction genre. So you'll see us making moves towards supporting good contracts or showing writers like what's the best way to get their work out into the industry. So it's definitely an organization that was built on membership and focused on the members and is now moving out and supporting like the larger science fiction and fantasy genre community.
So all the members are writers, correct?
Yeah, so they're all writers and creators, and it was interesting. When we first started before we had this big kind of new media shift that's happened over the last 10 to 20 years. So we started out with short stories and novels, and then started adding in novellas and novelettes and all these different forms of story. And then now you're starting to see movies, graphic novels, comics. We'll also have in the next year eligible now for the Nebula Awards is poetry in this upcoming year. So.
Very good. So you focus on science fiction and fantasy. Is horror included?
Yeah, so horror is included under that like speculative fiction kind of genre umbrella. One of our pieces that's nominated, one of the works nominated this year under novel is John Wiswell's John Wiswell's new book, and Someone You Can Build a Nest In. And that one, it definitely straddles this line between horror and speculative fiction, sci-fi fantasy. And, there was a discussion for a while about, what term we should use in terms of sci-fi fantasy or speculative fiction. And I think speculative fiction has a little bit of a bigger umbrella, but we definitely on the SIFWA side we bring in sci-fi fantasy writers and horror writers, and we also bring in like the romantasy writers that are kind of straddling that line between romance and sci-fi fantasy as well too.
I think Robert A. Heinlein once wrote that science fiction was a terrible name, but we're stuck with it.
Yeah, it is very true. And we're constantly abbreviating things and then unabbreviating them. So, we have SFF and then we go to SFF FA,
Things change and stay the same. So, you are you're a member, obviously, and the president, which means that you're a writer. Do you lean more in the direction of one of those genres than the others?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely lean personally more towards fantasy in my writing and in my work. My background is I'm a folklorist, so I've studied mythology and stories and kind of the reason why different stories resonate over time throughout history and throughout different cultures. And the way that I kind of came into SIFWA was actually around in 2020. The writing organization that I work with, the transition onto Zoom and into the online land during the pandemic was actually pretty easy for us, just because we have volunteers that are all over the place. So we had been using Zoom very actively and regularly. So I reached out to SIFWA just asking if SIFWA needed some help in terms of the shifting into online platforms. And in that way, I got connected into the Nebula Awards and helped support and then ultimately produce the Nebula Awards for the last few years. So I've been around the SIFWA community for a while, and I personally have always loved volunteering with the Nebulas and like basically celebrating all those really great, amazing works. And behind the scenes, we actually like read all of them, like we read all the novellas and short stories, and we try to play the games, and so really get kind of immersed in that year's finalists and the works that are like kind of at the forefront of the genre that year.
Well, why don't you tell our audience what the Nebula Awards are and maybe how they differ from other awards in the science fiction, fantasy, and horror fields?
Yeah, that's a great question because I know there's a couple of really important awards, and we'll see a lot of them being announced right around the same time, actually. So if we look for a second at like the Hugos and the Locus Awards and the Nebula Awards, and then there's several other ones, obviously. The Hugos are always voted on by the fans and the larger sci-fi community. So you can have people who are writing sci-fi and like writing sci-fi fantasy. And then you'll also have fans of sci-fi fantasy. So it's interesting to look at those lists and see how they compare. Locus as well is open to the public voting. So if you see a piece that makes it across Locus and into Hugos and into the Nebulas, that's something that is really standing up really strong because it can be both in like the creative community and in the fan community as well. But for the nebula specifically, then it's voted on by the SIFWA members. So that's people who are working in the science fiction and fantasy writing community and creative community. So there's a threshold for when you get to become a SIFWA member, and it's kind of like I always see it as like a little check mark on your writing career. But it's definitely over the last several years become more and more accessible because the way that we publish and the way that we work in the industry has dramatically changed. As like I was saying, like new media and the internet and where we're publishing and where we're creating and all those stories and games and poetry and so yeah, so in terms of the nebulas themselves, like we've been running the Nebula Awards since 1965, so this is our diamond year anniversary. And it's very, very cool to go back and see, what was being nominated in those first nebulas to what's being nominated now. And I personally think, having read a lot of those nebula stories and played a lot of those games, I played way too much Baldur's Gate, not going to talk about it. But the the pieces that are nominated for the nebulas over and over again, those works are kind of pushing at the edges of genre, and they're pushing at things that like we care about and we're thinking about and that we're actively challenging at the time as writers and creators. So I always, some of them just make you feel uncomfortable because there's something that like is already hard for you to deal with and that you're trying to imagine and recreate and rethink. So that's the thing that I love about the nebulas.
I'd have to go back and count, but I think Harlan Ellison won a lot more nebulas than he did Hugo's.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see, right? Where you look at who is winning the Nebulas, who is winning the Hugos, and what years too, and
Mm-hmm.
what was being nominated. We were just talking about this the other day that Dune by Frank Herbert, like Frank Herbert didn't win the Grandmaster Award,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of the big award recognizing like your legacy and the work that you did throughout your career, and sometimes those just get missed in terms of like who's being nominated, and then there's other
Yeah.
times where something matters to us like so much later. Like I feel like Ursula Le Guin is an example of someone whose legacy just keeps
Yeah.
going on and on, and we keep looking at her work in different ways. So I love seeing who was nominated across all those different awards, and there's things like the Lodestar Award as well, and yeah, and how those all play into like the industry as a whole.
Well, and Samuel R. Delany, I don't think ever won a Hugo for a novel, but he won at least two Nebula awards for novels. And you wonder, first really prominent Black science fiction author, what sort of role did that play? But definitely the SIFWA, the writers in SIFWA recognized in Delaney something that they, as fellow writers, really respected.
Mhm.
And I think it probably took the wider audience more time to catch up with that, because at the time that Delaney was winning his Nebulas, the stuff that was winning Hugos was not really anything like what he was writing.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think we see that even with Octavia Butler as well.
Mm-hmm.
The A few years ago we launched the Infinity Award as a way of recognizing creators whose, yeah, like I was saying, whose work hadn't been acknowledged in the past, and
Right.
so actually giving them the credit that like they kind of earned or deserved but didn't get at the time.
Yeah.
And Octavia was a great example of that, of somebody who wasn't a grandmaster but made such a big impact on the industry.
Yeah.
And
Well, for sure. Yeah. And she's getting recognized now in, like you say, other media.
mhm,
There was recently a Kindred television series, and it's great. It's better late than never, but it's great that her vision is getting out there
mhm.
to the rest of to the science fiction community, and then to now beyond the science fiction community. So the Nebula Awards. I've heard people say that they consider the Hugo to be the Oscar of science fiction, but in terms of the way the awards are presented, it seems like the Hugo and the Locus Award are really more People's Choice Awards. You have to be a fan who cares enough to go through the process of voting, and then the winner is based on basically a popularity contest about of the fans who like cared enough to vote. The Nebulas are much more like the Oscar in their methodology, in that you have to be part of the Association of Creators in order to vote. So, how do you think that has led to different choices for the nebulas than for maybe some other awards? And you can answer that either historically, or how you think that plays out today, whatever makes the most sense.
Yeah, that's a great question because so I went to Worldcon in Scotland this last year, and it was so fun sitting in the audience because as someone who's been running the Nebula Awards for the last few years, like you have those things in your head about how you want to run an award ceremony, right? But also like. I have my people that I'm personally like rooting for, but then also the people that like I've met and I've come to know and I've read their work because of going through the Nebulous process with them. So seeing some of those people also hit the stage at the Hugos, like I was saying, I think it's a really big recognition if you can get onto several of those ballots, because you're kind of crossing across all those different areas. And we do tend to see a lot more groundbreaking work happening on the Nebula side, but also a lot of groundbreaking social work and the pushing the boundaries of our expectations of what sci-fi fantasy should be. I think we see a lot of that in the Nebulas. And then there'll be those books that like kind of destroy across every single award category, and you know them when you read them. And but yeah, I would say my one of my favorite things is seeing some of those people nominated like across those awards. And also having read several of those books when I was at Worldcon, watching people take the stage and go like, "We saw them at the Nebulas," like, and we're excited to celebrate them that way too. So yeah, I think
Some
there's definitely.
some community-minded individual has built a Goodreads list of the Triple Crown winners, the Hugo, the Locust, and the Nebula, and I reference that list a lot. I I try to be a little bit, well, actually, very selective about what I buy in paper these days, just because you get to be old enough and you've just moved too many boxes of books from house to house to house. But I've really, one of the things that I do have my sights to set on is collecting all of those that have won all three of those, because I do agree that that does speak to a level of quality and cuts across kind of the popularity aspect of it, because it's like,
Mhm.
well, if the writers and a couple of groups of fans all thought this was a great, novel, doesn't guarantee I'm going to like it, but there's probably a pretty good chance that I'll at least see something worthwhile in it. So,
Yeah, yeah, that there's something that drew everybody in and had them thinking or
right.
wanting that work to get some attention. Right.
So the Nebulas is, it's not just an award ceremony, although there is that, but it is a conference. Can you tell
Mhm.
us what people who participate in the Nebula conference would experience, and the different ways in which science fiction readers and fantasy and horror readers can participate?
Yeah, and I would say also, so I come to this as the president of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers, but I also, like I was saying, I'm the executive director of a writing nonprofit myself. So when I look at conferences, I'm often like making recommendations of conferences for writers about like what would be a good choice for you, like where are you at in your path, and like what would kind of help you build your career or make those connections that you need. Like, and I think the Nebulas in particular, it's an entire professional development conference weekend. So from the start on Thursday to going home on Sunday. There's workshops and panels, and there's things that are very industry focused. So that idea that maybe you've already published your first short story, or you have written several novels, there's kind of a place for everyone there. But it's also a place where if you're brand new, like you can still step in and learn a lot. But that content is like really rich and deep and is meant to like challenge and further your career. So very intentionally focused on professional workshops. And this year in particular, we have made a switch to having some of those workshops as well as panels. So in the panels, we get to see industry professionals alongside finalists and other authors, and um, even like, past SIFWA presidents. So we have all of these people who are coming in with a lot of knowledge about how the industry both has worked and like how they see it working into the future. And then workshops that are focused on actual like in-depth focused support for your writing career or support for where you're at in the publishing industry too. So that in that way, I think that's kind of what makes the Nebulas shine a little bit different in terms of I go to lots of sci-fi fantasy conventions, and I personally also go to a lot of writer conferences since I'm in that zone as well. And I think that's kind of the difference with the Nebula conference that happens around the Nebula Awards is like, yeah, you can get that extra help to build out your writing career and to build out your creative career.
Where is the conference taking place in Kansas City?
It is in Kansas City at oh man, this is that thing that I should have off the top of my head, right? Hold on. I've literally been there, the Marriott Country Club.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so that's the funny part is, can I tell you that? So I got to go and tour in the Marriott Country Club, and go around Kansas City. What was that late February? And so yeah, it was like it's great. The hotel has a kind of like when you first come in, it's a little bit smaller as you come in, and then as you go upstairs, it just expands out into like lots of ballrooms and workshop rooms and panel rooms and places to kind of gather and network and chat and talk. So
Well, and Codex readers, viewers, listeners will know that I'm from Kansas City, and the Marriott is just on the Country Club Plaza. So if you need a break, the Plaza is a great place to go and grab a snack or just walk around and window shop. So
yeah, there's so many restaurants and shops and
I thought that was a great choice, because when I saw it was going to be in Kansas City, I was sure it was going to be at the downtown Marriott. But the plaza is such a more welcoming place for pedestrians. That was a really good choice.
Yeah, and that was the thing that I loved about the country club in particular is, we looked at a lot of different hotels and then going in and yeah, just that it has like this inviting atmosphere. There's a little coffee shop where people can hang out and talk. There's a bar. But then as you go upstairs, that's where a majority of the conference is going to take place. And so you know that if you see anyone on that second floor, like they're pretty much just with the Nebula Awards, like with the conference that weekend. And
They're
that's
one of your people.
yeah, and that is my favorite part about going to conventions and conferences where you have your lanyard, you can look at someone and know that they're like in the community that you are and like you can have those conversations.
Do you have a personal favorite work that has won the Nebula Award?
Oh man, this is so hard. I am terrible at at identifying like particular books. This is I should actually I'm like looking around to see what I have. So all my entire you talked about having all the bookshelves and like
Yeah.
and books and things. So I have my living room is downstairs and it's wall to wall books. And I in particular I'm gonna throw some curveballs here. I also read middle grade and young adult fantasy, and
Sure.
so a lot of my downstairs shelves, I have a middle grade shelf and then a young adult shelf, and then like a whole bunch of sci-fi fantasy genre, and maybe alphabetized. I'm kind of that person. But then I also read a lot on Libby, the app that you can get from the library, and I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So I want to say that I've personally, over the last few years, in terms of nominees, I have loved what Clark's World has been doing in general. I'm just going to put that out there because I've listened to a lot of those, the short stories that are coming through there, and those have been really great and have been
Sure.
nominated over and over again. Um, I loved Alatsaway by Darcy Little Badger.
Okay.
So that was just a very unexpected book for me. I think I had read it and I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And she kind of breaks narrative structures and tries a whole bunch of different things. And so reading that one was a surprise for me.
Well,
And
very good. Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for handling my curveball. Uh,
definitely. I was like,
but
I could talk about books for a long time. So
I will say you brought up middle grade. One of my, I mean, I think my favorite award that you give out at the Nebulas is the Andre Norton Award for middle grade and young adult fiction.
yeah.
I am from the generation that when I grew up, like the books that were in the library, in the public library, in the junior high library, a lot of Andre Norton books.
Mm.
And I'm ashamed but not alone to admit that I did not realize that Andre Norton was a woman until I got into junior high. And one of my nerdy know-it-all friends was like, I was like, well, I like on this book by Andre Norton. He's such a great writer. And he goes, she's a woman, right? And I'm like, I did not, like, mind blown. And of course, now I understand, the social issues that went into that, and it's wonderful that she reached the heights, this grandmaster heights as an author. It's sad that she had to kind of disguise her identity in order to do it, but um, she was really my introduction to science fiction with Zero Stone and Uncharted Stars, and that in turn then led me to the Heinlein Juveniles and then to more adult books. But I love the fact that you have a collection of young adult books in your library. I've started one because I have a 6 year old, and so I'm like, I cannot guarantee that she will become a science fiction fan, but I'm going to do everything I possibly can until she says, Dad, read me something else. And so I have been finding, new young adult, middle grade fiction for her. And it's been great. It's been a wonderful journey to kind of go back and be like, oh, I'm going to be able to give her some guidance now on this. So tell me before we wrap up, what is it about a middle grade fiction that you really enjoy?
Oh, I love it that you asked that, because 100% middle grade, there's some big hope and possibility in middle grade that I don't think you see anywhere else. I always go back to some of the, even there's a book, Cog by Greg, and one of the things that Greg does in Cog is it's just funny and weird, and there's robots and there's all of these different things that happen, and I think you can do a lot with, in a very dorky way, I'm going to say, with narrative structures and with expectations, because like kids are, in middle grade, like there's not that focus on here's what you need to have in front of you. Like there's not an expectation of this is what a story has to look like. And so you'll see authors that are challenging identity and challenging like narrative structure and challenging our expectations of what a story should be. But then also they bring things together in these big, beautiful ways as well. So I think there's so many middle grade books. And even Susan Cooper, who was nominated last year, or who received the Grandmaster Award, is somebody that when she was nominated, everyone was like, just because it's somebody that you remember that impacted you in this incredible way, when you read their work, and to see them like kind of take the stage and talk about their career and imagine the possibilities was amazing. So that's the
Well,
thing that I love.
this is the future of our fan base, right?
Mhm.
We have to produce books that are going to interest uh, readers as young readers if we want them to grow up to be adult readers who still want to read science fiction and fantasy and horror.
Yeah. Yeah, and
So
next time we chat, I'll be downstairs, so then I have all the books that I can reference and I'll just start pulling them off the shelves. Like,
it sounds good. And that does bring us to the end of our time. Actually ran a little bit over. Apologize for that, but I was having
okay,
too good a time asking you questions.
me too.
Thank you so much for taking the opportunity to come on and talk to us about the nebula. And I hope to see you there in June.
In Kansas City. Have a good
All
one.
right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please share your thoughts about this episode by commenting online in the original article at thecosmiccodex.com. You can also find source links in the online text. Don't miss an article. Subscribe today to the Cosmic Codex email newsletter at thecosmiccodex.com. Thank you for listening.